One important thing happened in my life, which was a couple of months ago, actually only a few months ago, when I joined Nulife Ventures and was charged with a task, which was to become the chief science advisor and to create a scientific advisory board. And a lot of you have not met me, so I do want to go over just a little bit about my background. It starts with science at a very, very early age. So you have to understand, I grew up in St. Joseph, Michigan, okay? And there is a scientific phenomenon in St. Joseph, and it's called lake effect. And you all know Chicago? What's Chicago called? The Windy City, yeah. Well, St. Joseph was the recipient of the wind that would come across 56 miles of Lake Michigan, very cold, and hit the bluff in St. Joseph, Michigan, and then most of the first stories of homes would be literally covered with snow. And I tell you this because as a kid, that means about 4 months out of the year, you're doing something other than playing outside. So fortunately, I was in an environment where we were in the basement, and I could not wait for my dad to get home, who was an engineer and product design specialist and researcher at a little company. Does anybody have a washing machine? Yeah, Whirlpool. So Whirlpool headquarters are in St. Joseph, Michigan. But it doesn't start there. It actually starts with my aunt and uncle, Uncle Bud and Aunt Betty. So they lived a block away. My aunt was a PhD food scientist. And of course, she met her husband, my uncle, in school. And he also was a PhD food scientist. So instead of going to Thanksgiving dinner and discussing how good the gravy was, Uncle Bud was talking about tryptophan and why it makes you sleepy. So it wasn't a normal upbringing like normal kids get in kindergarten. So, but it caused me to question, and my aunt was a little more social with her PhD doctorate, and she was in charge of the entire lunch program for the state of Michigan. So her claim to fame, and I think it's a good one, was completely altering and introducing the fact that trans fats were not good for kids. And she is the one that converted from margarine to butter in the state of Michigan. This was back in literally the 60s, before any of this hit. When did trans fats start becoming bad? Like literally only 10 years ago. So that was Aunt Betty. And again, any question I had regarding food science and all of that could easily be answered at the Thanksgiving dinner or any time I went to play with my cousins. So my father, interestingly, worked at Whirlpool. And as a kid, you got to remember, what do kids do? They do show and tell, right? So I kind of had a loaded gun every time show and tell would come up because my uncle created space food for the astronauts, real stuff. And he'd bring it home. And then I would be able to bring these really cool things to show and tell. And the interesting thing was, when I would bring the stuff, the teachers would ended up having me go last in show and tell because they realized once Billy brought his cool stuff, the kids weren't listening to Tommy Horton's Ant Farm. It's just not real fun, not real cool. So that was a social aspect of it. And then at home with my dad, I would always love when he got home. He always got home at 5:15, and I was downstairs waiting. And I usually played on a workbench, except my workbench, unlike my dad's, was much lower. And it was actually my mother's ironing board. So I love making Estes rockets. I love the fact that Elmer's glue comes out white and it turns clear. Most people think, well, that's no big deal. I was fascinated by that. And then I used 2-part epoxy because it was so much stronger. And I would drip that onto my mother's ironing board, which kind of negates a good shirt ironing because you got bumps. It's like little motocross thing going on with bumps. And so needless to say, Billy was in trouble often, and my dad would come home and hopefully save the day. So when I spilled Elmer's glue, he taught me about water solubility. And he goes, hey, let's just stick that in water, put it in the washer, and lo and behold, it comes out and everything's happy. I'm like, wow, that's really cool. And then the epoxy thing wasn't quite the same. So he didn't have a quick fix for that one. But the next day he brought a jar home, and it was clear liquid. And he called it Perk. And I'm like, cool. And he goes, watch out, it's a very strong solvent. And so what do kids do when you have something dangerous as a solvent, whatever? You stick your finger in it. And I pulled out my finger, and it turned snow white because Perk is a solvent, and it literally took all the fats out of my skin cells. But I did discover that when I used Mom's Jergens lotion, it kind of came back to normal, and Mom didn't hit the fan. But he brought this home because he poured it onto the stain, and again saved the day because Perk literally dried it out completely. Took a knife, flaked it off, kick is good, everybody's happy. So my dad saved the day, but the reason why science got so enamored in my heart and really changed my life is because it created a relationship with my father, and it got me out of trouble with my mother. So nothing negative in science class in 8th grade. I mean, this is literally when I'm 5 and 6 years of age. So with those experiences, science became very near and dear to my heart, and I was always bored in school, you know, in the 1st grade, you know, see Spot run, and I'm like, see Billy run, you know, just, some things are so boring in class. And I'll never forget, I had to stay after because I got in trouble at one of these show and tell things. And so I was staying after, then Mr. Belsky would come by, and he was the principal, and he would talk to the meanest lady ever known to man, which was my 1st grade teacher, Miss Anderson. All right, she was so old, she looked like those National Geographic things, Ramsey's tomb. I looked just like, wow, there's my teacher. So I had to stay after school, and I heard them talking, and they said something, and then said something about a distant elephant. And so I was looking through National Geographic and the encyclopedias in the 1st grade trying to figure out what this distant elephant thing was. And unfortunately, my dad was going to a parent-teacher meeting, hopefully to save me again from the ridicule of this meanest lady in the world. And I said, Dad, when you get there, can you kind of check on this distant elephant thing? He goes, what? I go, they called me a distant elephant. I don't quite get what's going on there. So he goes and does that thing, and then comes back home, and he goes, yeah, you know, paying attention in class, Bill. Other than that, you know, yeah, I think you're going to make it through the 1st grade. And but I did check with Miss Anderson on the distant elephant, and he goes, they weren't calling you a distant elephant. They were referring to you as a disturbing element. So in creation of the Scientific Advisory Board, it was very important for me to look at resumes, reading in between the lines to see the heart of the individual, and actually finding the disturbing element in each person. Because we have disruptive technology, and I want disruptive people to participate in this board. And that is so important for all of us. And that is the basic credential of these individuals. And I always remember some philosopher talking about, you know, the tiger in the cage. And is it the bars that retain that tiger, or is it the space in between the bars? And my philosophy is it is the space in between. And so when I introduce these individuals, I've already done the credential of looking at the space in between the lines on the resumes. And I can assure you, if anybody is the least bit cold in this room, the people I'm going to bring up have at least 7 degrees altogether. So get ready to warm up. But anyway, with that, would you mind if I got a round of applause to bring some people up? first individual has been with Nulife Ventures for quite a bit of time, and he will be getting up here, and all of the individuals will be asked to share about their clinical experience and background because it's so diverse. And then the second question I will probably have for them is their experience with Avicen. And we have a short period of time here, so these resumes are so robust. And this is a collection of individuals that were able to get here, okay? So we are going to have many more people on the Scientific Advisory Board. And I had a question the other night, at dinner, why isn't it a medical advisory board, Bill? That's like it. I go, no, actually it's not it, because there could be people that have a scientific background that aren't medical, so it is appropriate to call it a scientific advisory board. The function of this group, because everything that's in my life that meant something was based on evidence and credibility. Because if you don't have that and you're sharing something with the most important person in the world, which is a friend, and you lose that credibility, there is not a check that could be written by anybody in this room large enough to get that friend back. Do you agree? So that's where we're at with this group. So without further ado, please welcome to the Scientific Advisory Board, Dr. Joey Bird. Come on up, Joey. The next individual, and we have a good balance, Dr. Diane Jordan. Diane Jordan, are you here? And Dr. Stan Canota, my brother. And Dr. James Cantarotos, all the way from the great state of Texas. And last but not least, Dr. Brad Hayes. So why don't we start from left to right? Dr. Bird?
Testing.
Testing.
Testing. Testing.
Are we on?
Hello, hello, hello.
Oh, there we go. We're on.
All right.
Very good. So Dr. Bird, if you could, why don't you share your medical background and a little bit about your impressions of challenges throughout the medical background and kind of what brought you to Avicen, and then we'll do another round on those.
My background is in the field of medicine. I did a 4-year training in medical school in Tennessee, actually, which is pretty far from here, but they still have medical schools in the South. And after completing that medical training, I always viewed myself as going into ophthalmology. I thought that would be an area of interest for me. I'd worked with a retinal surgeon, and I really loved what they did. It was very fascinating, very delicate work that they did. I did a rotation in my 3rd year with a reproductive endocrinologist, an infertility specialist, and I fell in love with it. I mean, it was just something that I knew I needed to do. What I didn't realize was I had to do a residency in obstetrics and gynecology. So for those of you that don't know anything about the residency experience, there's a huge difference between a 4-year degree in ophthalmology and how much time you spend in the hospital versus an obstetrics and gynecology residency. It was like light years different. In ophthalmology, you took call from home. In OBGYN, you were in the house, in the hospital, every 3rd night for 36 hours long. It was just a totally different experience, but I fell in love with it, and I really enjoyed that experience. It was 4 years of training in obstetrics and gynecology, and then I had to do a fellowship, which was added training in the field of reproductive medicine. And I've been practicing in that field since 1996, and have just enjoyed my experience. It brings a great meaning to my life. And I also have a secondary passion in age management medicine. So I did a little bit of training in that, and that's really where I became aware of alternatives to the field of medicine and what we offer. many of the people on this stage were much more probably educated in your background in alternatives to what we consider traditional medicine than even me. But I had to do a little investigating and learning after the fact. So I really appreciate the work that many of you have had in the field of managing things in an alternative method.
Excellent.
So.
Excellent. Yeah, keep the one that works.
So you just want a little introduction to our background?
Yes,
basically?
please.
All right. So I've been a holistic integrative chiropractor for 37 years. But back in 1971, I dropped out of UCSB and went to work for the Jack LaLanne Nutrition Center. And we had to be at work once a week at 6:30 in the morning to start learning about vitamins and minerals. And so that was my first, when I started learning about nutrition, and I was actually on television with Jack LaLanne. And he asked me if I'd had any children, and I said no, and he said, well, you're too fat. And so get on the floor and start doing those Jack LaLanne sit-ups.
Building rapport. There you go.
That's right. So the people that I worked with at the Jack LaLanne Center said, if you always wanted to be a doctor but liked alternative natural healing methods, you should be a chiropractor. And I actually had no idea what chiropractors were because my father was a medical doctor, my mom was an RN, and it was basically a forbidden word in our household, chiropractic. So I've been a rebel my whole entire life, and so it's just really exciting. I have an insatiable curiosity, so I've been to over 200 seminars, I think, in 37 years. And I just keep wanting to learn and how to help the body heal itself. That is my total primary focus. The body, as long as we're alive, it wants to be well, it wants to be vibrant. Let's find a way to remove the interference and get the body going. Thanks.
And Dr. Jordan's resume had so many worked with partnerships. It's the resume should actually say who you didn't work with.
Yes, my name is Stan Kinota, Dr. Kinota that is. I, just like Bill, a friend of mine, I had a love for science as I was growing up. I was very good in math. I loved anything to do with technology and thinking about science. So I went to UC Berkeley, studied molecular genetics, and biology in general. So I got my undergraduate degree from there. And after that, then I was thinking, what should I do? But anyway, so I wanted to do something in science. So, and also I love helping people. Medicine sounded good to me. So I applied to medical school. I got into Harvard. So I spent 4 years there, did my degree in medical doctorate in medicine. After that, I came back to California. I did my internship at Cedars-Sinai. That was straight medicine. After that, I went to USC, where I did residency in ophthalmology. So after graduating from ophthalmology, then I'm looking at the field. What should I do next? I love Southern California. At the same time, I met a gentleman who said, oh, we have so much great need here. We're opening a clinic. We're a lot of people. What do you think about primary care? I said, primary care. I'd done internal medicine at Cedars-Sinai. It was a very good experience. So I thought this is something I can try. So we opened the clinic. 0 patients the first day. There was absolutely 0 patients the first day because it was a brand new building. We just put a phone and a desk. We got some exam tables and so forth. So we went the first day. We went on the street, passed out the flyers. In the morning we did that, and then in the afternoon we got a patient already. So we got I think that first day we got 3 patients that came. We saw them. The next day they told their family. They started coming. Within 2 weeks, practice was just growing so fast because the need was so great. And so I've been doing that for 20 years, so did a lot of good things in the community, but there was something lacking because we're helping people, but because of the environment, we see that there is still something lacking. So a friend of mine one day called me saying, "Doctor, I want you to check this 2-minute video here." So I checked the 2-minute video. He said, come down, I want you to try this machine. But of course, my days have always been long because the need is so great in the community. Other doctors may share the same thing, but I don't know. But I just, living in Los Angeles, the need was so great. So I finished my days, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, I go to his house. That's 10 o'clock, I put my hand in the machine. I'm very tired while driving to go to Irvine, from Los Angeles. So when I used the machine the first time, I should say that before using the machine, I was really tired. So I'm really tired, but I still want to look at this machine because it was intriguing to me. So within 30 minutes, I felt this boost of energy that I had never felt before. I said, this is something great. This is something I'd like to know more about it. So I started learning about the machine. I started talking to people who were doing the business. And I knew that this is something that can help a lot of people. And based on that, then I started evaluating my life. And I see that going forward, there is a great potential in this machine. There's a great potential in this machine because so many people are suffering, but no one is telling them about this machine. So I want to be that person who can put the word out with every one of you here and all the people who are going to join us in the future, because we're going to change the world. And I know that's going to happen. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dr. James Contaratis. Everyone calls me Dr. K. No one says Contaratis, too hard to pronounce.
I almost did.
Yeah, that's okay.
We're close.
But my background is I have a degree in chiropractic and a degree in medicine. I've just started my 30th year in practice and in the great state of Texas.
Yes.
If anybody's here.
Yes.
So I think I have the greatest job in the world. I think someone else might disagree. They might have a better job than me, but I from my own personal experience, I plan to never retire, so hopefully my goal is to get to about 95, and they're going to have to carry me out of there. But my goal is to, each day, push people towards a more natural way of healing. And it doesn't mean the absence of drugs. There's a need for drugs. But there's a possibility out there that there's something better. Then we're going to try that first. And this machine is that. The science is there. The things that it does, increasing blood flow, decreasing inflammation, increasing the removal of cellular debris. These are the things that you can't take a pill for. There's no surgery that does this. And there are no side effects. If there was a pill that did all these things, we would all be scrambling to get it. But the point is, it's not. And there are no side effects. And I'm amazed at what this has done. I know we're going to tell our stories here in a minute, so I can't wait to tell mine. But I'm really honored to be here. Thank you, everybody.
And Dr. K, real quickly, you actually have a relationship with your clinic, and then you have admission privileges at a hospital, or?
Yes, yeah, as well.
So,
yeah.
Very unique, very unique.
Hi, I'm Dr. Brad Hayes. I'm from Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm a practicing chiropractor. I've been a chiropractor since 1977, so when you add that up, that's 42 years.
Well, and the modesty of this man is unbelievable, because when I was talking to him, I said, well, actually your resume is the longest one we've had. And he goes, no, I'm just old.
I'm 68 years old and I still enjoy practice, and I'm not gonna give it up anytime soon. So the practice I have is elite athletes, and because I have this gray hair, I have Medicare patients follow me around. So so I'm involved in research. I do a lot of research through Oklahoma State University, and we're involved in a couple projects right now. One of the areas I'm an expert in is arthritis, and another area that we're doing research on right now, we found a way to keep people from tripping and falling. it's a 30-second procedure, and you change it. And I'm talking about
Interesting.
people not having to use canes and walkers and things like that immediately. It's dramatic what happens. And so that'll be published next year. And I'm sure I'm going to be involved in some Avicen research here pretty soon.
Well, and you actually have a bit of a background that we handed out in bottles today. Tell us about that.
Oh, yeah, if you mean with Nathan Bryan?
There you go.
Yeah, a very good friend of mine is Nathan Bryan. Nathan is a PhD. He's with, he changed recently he's with Baylor University Medical School. He's an instructor there, and he is the world's expert on nitric oxide. He's worked with all 3 of the Nobel Prize winners, and so I've taught many times with Nathan. I understand nitric oxide very well. Not quite as well as he has. He's written a textbook, but Nathan and I are very good friends, and I'm involved with nitric oxide.
Very good. So can you see that there may be a future to have some very credible educational formats in our meetings, just from what you've heard already? Very good. So if you want, pass this back down to Dr. Bird. And if you can, give us a little bit of your experience with Avicen. And
Yeah, I failed to mention this, but it was probably about a year ago that Bill Resides and I had been in business together. And through Jeannie and Mita and some of their experiences with Danielle and Tom, introduced us to this Avicen concept. And I remember distinctly them flying into Chattanooga I wondered, why would somebody come from beautiful Southern California to Chattanooga? I mean, I think it's beautiful there, but I also love San Diego too. So and from the moment we met them, I mean, I felt infected by this notion that this little device that you put your hands in could literally change the lives of individuals. And so that evening we got to talking and having an experience, and they actually each brought a unit because they wouldn't share. You know, they had to have their own individual unit. And I thought that was telling because, you know, they were addicted. And I thought, well, this is an interesting concept.
different than opioids. Now
Yes, this is a good addiction,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. And so they brought it down to the lobby in the hotel, and I said, okay, so what do we do here? And they brought out this glove and put it on, and I put it in there. And, you know, I was a little skeptical. I just didn't know what to expect. And of course, you feel your hand warming up, and you start wondering, okay, what's about to happen here? It was about 8, maybe 10 minutes into this, and I'd really started to feel the effects in my body, which was relaxation. I think that was probably one of the biggest things that I noticed initially. And when I learned more about what the FDA clears them to say, that it helps with muscular pain, arthritic type pain, I experienced the muscular relief almost immediately when I had that. But I really didn't have a lot of aches and pains that I could point out that I was concerned about, or at least I didn't think I did. But I started noticing that my workouts were much better. I recovered quicker from those workouts, so I didn't have the pain and discomfort. Many of the things that Michael and Mark pointed out, which was fantastic information, by the way, about pulling lactic acid out of the muscles, allowing the muscles to engage and get back to work much quicker. I think I felt that initially, and from that point on, I really became a believer. It took about 6 months to put together this concept we call Nulife Ventures. A lot of hard work went into it, but you know what? I've never seen a group of people that represent the highest quality in humanity and interest in others. It's just amazing to me how this product and the products that we're about to bring to the market synergistically work together to create this beautiful synergy that I just can't wait to experience. In fact, if you heard me rattling as we came up here, I got my samples of this Venox.
So I've been studying for several years with an Australian herbalist named Dr. Kerry Bone. And for the last 2 years, he's been hammering us with the idea that microcirculatory dysregulation is basically the cause behind all the major illnesses and diseases. So when Lisa Porto walked into my office on a cold call, and she mentioned microcirculation to me, I had a moment like out of a cartoon. It was like a light bulb went off. It was like microcirculatory dysregulation, microcirculation enhancement, and it was like they just collided above my head. It was really an unbelievable moment. And I thought, I get this. I can use this. And I just jumped right in, and I was sold immediately. And one of my first, for me personally, after about 3 days using it, I started sleeping 6 hours straight. And I'd been waking up every hour and a half to 2 hours for months. I couldn't believe it. And I'm waking up ready to go, alert, and I don't even want to push the snooze alarm. I know that sounds silly, but I've been pushing the snooze alarm since I was about 11 years old. And so that has been really exciting. I'm just waking up refreshed and feeling like I really got rested. But one of my first responses was a 90-year-old woman. She's my friend's mother, who fell down and broke her hip, and then she couldn't walk. She couldn't walk for 2 months. And we didn't know why. We thought maybe there was some sort of a disconnect between her brain and her body. But I took the Avicin to their house, and the daughter insisted on putting it for only 10 minutes on low. And that night, Mom asked to get up and try to walk. The next day, she put her on it 4 times for 10 minutes on low, and she's been walking with a walker with help ever since.
Jeez. Thank you.
As I said a little bit earlier, I use the Avicin late at night. So whenever you have a person want to use Avicin, it's too late, this device can be used anytime because the effect can be produced at any time whenever someone uses the device. So I'm glad that I was able to use the device when I was feeling very tired, and I could see the difference, how I felt, like I had a boost of energy. So I knew that I didn't, the only thing that I had done different was I had used an Avicin. And so I had also did some research a little bit, learn about the device, how it works, the history of it, the indication according to the FDA. So we have that in mind. So the personal experience, I think, was very important for me to convince me that this is something that is powerful. Also, my background being familiar with science, biology, the human system. So this is something that will go far and will help a lot of people. And that's the most important thing. We're helping people, we're helping the world.
And Dr. Kanota,
yes.
as an ophthalmologist,
Yes.
there are parts of the eyes that are not as vascular as some of the rest of the body.
Right.
But in your experience, can you share a little bit about your...
So what we know in ophthalmology is that, let's take, for example, a person who is diabetic. So in the back of the eye, that's where the retina is. So when someone is diabetic for a long time, what happened is that their microcirculation is damaged. And because of that, then there is hypoxia in all part of the body, so to speak. Neuropathy. But specifically with the eye, there is hypoxia in the retina. And because there is hypoxia in the retina, we know that the body has a way to try to heal itself. So what it does is some factors are produced that stimulate growth of new vessels, and that is caused by initial response of hypoxia or poor oxygen environment. And so using this device, the reason I say it's going to be powerful, because some people have said here, this is the first device we have that improves microcirculation. And when it improves microcirculation, it delivers oxygen, it delivers nutrients. At the same time, it removes poisons, it removes lactic acid. But the important thing is in delivering oxygen to the tissue, it allows the body machinery to work because oxygen is fuel. Of course, oxygen comes in contact with food, nutrients. It allows for the chemical reaction to work and also the cell to be able to thrive. So without oxygen, then there's a problem. So specifically to the eye, then, so we have this device. If you're using it every day, you're using it twice a day as recommended, and you are watching what you're eating, you're protecting your eye. So this device, there is no indication that you should use it to protect your eye, according to the FDA. But I'm telling you that if you're using this device and you're watching what you're eating, what you're doing is you are helping your microcirculation. You're allowing your body to get more oxygen, more nutrients to the right place in the capillary bed. And so we're looking at the way the body works. And so a lot of indication will come in the future after the studies are done. But we do know that for people who are here, using the device will produce more results than the ones that we already know. So those will come in time, and the studies will come in time. That's why this group is important to think about ways to design clinical studies to show evidence of what the device does.
Very good.
That helps you a little bit.
Yeah, very good answer. Dr. King.
I think it's important, especially everybody up here, to be educated, highly educated, but there's a downfall to being overeducated, which is you're extremely skeptical about everything. You scoff at things, you have already formed an opinion about things, so when the absence showed up at my office, I really was not hopeful or could see that there was anything that these claims that were being made that it could do all these things. And right about the same time, I had a difficult patient show up. Difficult not because of her personality or anything like that, but she came in with her own file, and it was about this thick. And it was MRIs of the cervical spine, the lumbar spine, multiple disc bulges, previous fusion in the lower back, migraine headaches, insomnia for about 1.5 years, had been to doctor, clinic to therapy, rehab, everything. And she was highly recommended, our office patient recommended her to us. And so you just kind of start going through all these things and you're thinking, how can we help her when nobody else has? And we started investigating, kind of trying to form a diagnosis, trying to figure out if we could help this person. And then we decided that made no promises, but we're going to do everything we could to treat her and see if we could help her. And 2 days after that, she gets in a car accident. So now it's even worse.
Boy.
So now I've got to do even more thinking, how can we do something that nobody else has done to change this woman's life? And there was the machine that I hadn't put on anybody yet. And so started putting her on it, and within a week, now remember 1.5 years, she had migraine headaches. They were gone within a week. And then we've never seen a patient like this before, where she would just go into spasms just by moving in a certain way. The massage therapist couldn't touch her. He came to me and said, I've never seen this before. And within about 3 weeks, she was able to lie down and get a massage. She had been using a cane, was no longer using a cane. So this woman is getting her life back. not just the minimal treatment that we've been doing, but we've been doing the Avicen. And I really believe that is the single biggest reason why this woman's life has changed. So if it's going to change her life, imagine what it can do for all the people who have never heard of this machine. And that's our job, is to go out there and introduce this machine to these people and change their lives. Thank you.
Well, I have my good friend Scott from Dallas, Texas, introduced me to this machine. And I had an interest right off the bat because I understand microcirculation. And I knew it was a place where we needed some help in. And with my relationship with Nathan, I understood that we use nitric oxide. We could elevate that microcirculation to a degree, but imagine being able to add to that and make that even work better. That's where my interest is at. Now, I've incorporated it in my clinic, but I think I'll tell you about what happened with my wife. My wife has had cancer 4 times. The first time was breast cancer, and then she's had 3 bouts of ovarian cancer. And you know, usually that's a life sentence, an ovarian cancer diagnosis, particularly when it comes back, and that you can predict, based on science, you can predict how long a person is going to live. Based on that prediction, that's pretty solid information. She would not be with us now. She would have died a year and 9 months ago, 10 months ago. However, she's with us today. She's doing great. She's not having any problems at all. She's never missed a day of work, even with all the chemo and all the stuff she had. And we started using the Avicen with her. And she uses the Avicen 30 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes at night. And there's one addition, the only problem I've got with this, there's one additional thing that we did with her besides the Avicen, but the Avicen was right there with it. And the net result is that she even got better than what she was for a while. She's actually back to normal without any question, and her cancer marker, which is a CA-125, began to decrease. Now, it had been going up, and in fact, it was just ready to step over the threshold of cancer again, which is what would be expected, and it went down 4 points. And that was within about 15 days of starting the use of both Avicen and this other thing that we were using. And so I can't tell you exactly which one it was, but Avicen probably had a lot to do with it. And the bottom line is that she's the best she's been in 5 years. There's no evidence she's got cancer at all. And we're going to continue on with this.
Sounds very powerful. Next question. Dr. Bird. Yes. So what I was thinking is, you know, this panel has such an incredible medical background and so accurate in diagnoses and dealing with different people. But if you were to speak to a non-medical audience in certain situations, but I'd say probably 90% non-medical, what suggestions would you have as these folks like me are introducing this product?
Well, let me start with an experience that I had with someone in my practice, because you kind of talked about some of your experience with patients, and this was totally unexpected. I'm known as a fertility specialist, and yet I do have some of my patients that are there for hormone-related issues, hormone manipulation, things like that, and some gynecology patients. And I remember a patient of mine who came in, had an abnormal pap smear, which many of you notice is an annual screen for precancer or cancer of the cervix, and ultimately needed to be evaluated because it was abnormal. And at the end of that experience, ended up with cervical cancer diagnosis. And there's different stages to that. One being the least invasive, the beginning of cancer, all the way up to stage 4. She had stage 3, which meant that her lymph nodes were involved with this, which is a very frightening story to tell, because the lymphatic system carries cancer throughout the body. And she was given a very poor prognosis by her oncologist, and being the renegade that she is, she decided to look around. And the more she read, the more she realized that maybe there was other alternatives to they were recommending, chemotherapy and radiation. And I'm by no means saying radiation and chemotherapy are not necessary and proper situations. But in her case, she made a decision not to go that route. And she actually became involved with some alternative cancer specialists out of New York City. And they had a very unique approach to what they did. They used, of course, nutrients to try to boost the body's immune system. They used pancreatic enzymes as a way to break down, I believe, and I don't know this for a fact, but I believe they believe it broke down the protein coating on the outside of the cancer cell, which would hide the cancer cell from the body's immune system and prevent the immune system from doing its job. Now, we have immunotherapy now that pharmaceutical industry has identified and is available, and it has remarkable results in certain forms of cancer. And so I believe that it's a similar concept, but this pancreatic enzyme in combination with nutrients, and then a concept that I'd never really heard of, but has been around for probably over 100 years, is coffee enemas. And I looked at her like she had lost her mind. And she said, no, I'm going to do this. And so she began vigilantly following the regimens that were there. And I remember placing an ultrasound to look at her cervix. And we can use what we call color flow Doppler, which is basically a way to look at the vascular flow to the area using color. And I'd never seen so much blood supply to a cervix. I mean, it was just completely blue and red and white. And within 6 months of beginning that regimen, all of that blood flow was gone. And those of you that don't know what that means, cancer can only grow in the presence of blood supply. And that's the whole reason that she had all of that. And so it really caught my attention. And she had been probably about 2 years out when I heard about Avicen for the first time. And she had kind of been rocking along. They did some tumor markers that they do looking at the amount of tumor marker that's in the system. And they used hair analysis actually to identify that, which was kind of interesting. And they wanted her marker to be approaching 10. She got down from 32 down to 20, but it still indicated that there was cancer still present. And so she began the Avicen and was really using it. And here's probably a word of caution a little bit with the Avicen and how we're trying to learn how this works. She began using the Avicen, and I believe she started getting the effects of the pancreatic enzyme in the tumor that had not been exposed. And so she had this rapid killing of the cancer cells that had been hidden from that blood flow, and literally it overwhelmed her detox program, and her lymph nodes started swelling, and which was confirmation that something really dramatic was happening. We're still waiting on the hair analysis to see how much of that it has dropped, but it really caused her to have to understand the power of the Avicen unit and what it can do to deliver not only nutrients and oxygen and pull off toxins, but also when you're trying to kill something that shouldn't be there, the ability to deliver that and kill the cancer cell. So I know that's a little off from what you asked. But it reveals the power of this whole process of getting blood flow to areas where they haven't been before, or at least not in recent times. So how would I tell somebody to introduce this product to the, I think that's what you asked, right?
You brought out a lot. First of all, but, you know,
sorry guys, I ate up
concerned.
another 5 minutes, I guess, of nonsense, but
we're always concerned about compliant communication. We all have to respect, if we're not physicians, we do not play doctor with people, and clearly the Avicen is not a toy. It's not,
but it's a powerful tool that I believe is ultimately going to change this patient's life. Not that she didn't already take control of her life. I'm telling you guys, I was trained to believe that radiation and chemotherapy was the only way. And patients that didn't accept that were going to die. And I have this patient in front of me that I'm seeing information that just doesn't comport with what I've been taught. Well, I can either think this was a miracle from God, or I can believe that maybe something that these people were doing were actually working. Well, come to find out, they're both MD trained. One of them actually at Sloan Kettering, trained under the most premier oncologist in the United States, actually had been trained in bone marrow transplants and was exposed because he used to be a journalist to a journalist friend of his that had been looking at this man that was a dentist that had been curing pancreatic cancer and all these things. And so the more I learn about this stuff, it just opens my mind to things that we just don't understand. And I think this Avicen unit is just a great example of how we can have such a huge impact on the quality of an individual's life, even if they don't have obvious pain and discomfort. I believe this wellness concept is a whole new area that we should really be hitting on.
Very good, very good. Thank you.
I try to keep it really simple for people, and I just say, we all know the blood flows away from the heart and then back to the heart from the arteries and the veins, and where they meet, I just hold my hands up like that, where I put my fingertips together. And this is very oversimplifying, but I say the blood gets sticky, full of sugars and toxins and things, and the red blood cells stick together, like lifesavers stick together. And the little tubes are just one red blood cell thick. And when they stick together, they don't stick evenly, they stick crooked. And that's why those little tubes get plugged up. I don't know whether that's exactly true, but it gives us an idea, a picture in our head. So I say diabetics, they lose their fingers and their toes because those little tubes are blocked up. So the Avicen heats the blood, it unsticks the red blood cells. It gets the sticky blood flowing again, and then you're not going to lose your fingers and your toes if you're diabetic, and it's going to literally upregulate all of the functions in the body because you're bringing oxygen to the entire body. So I try to keep it really simple.
We like that. But Dr. Bird, you're okay.
I also try to keep it simple. So for most of the patients that I'm able, or any person I'm able to meet face to face, I usually have my Avicen with me. I let them know that this device has been cleared by the FDA as a Class 2 medical device for pain, muscle pain, also cleared for joint pain, arthritis, and we know that. And also the statement from the FDA says local circulation. So they know that, and we should all be compliant with that. I believe that is important. But we should also understand that all these things that the device has been cleared for, that is published in all our training manual and all our user guide, the basis for that is microcirculation. So that is a fact, and that has been documented by microscope. I think someone mentioned that in the presentation. And so we have that. And so when we come from that point of view, with understanding that the mechanism of the benefit of the device is based on microcirculation, in my opinion, we're right. And because as a scientist or as anyone who think in this fashion, we always want to know what's the mechanism. If you're a doctor, you always, they tell you this drug works, this thing works. What's the mechanism? Because whoever designed the human body, and that's a different story, we know that it's based on some principles and some laws. And so keeping it simple, I think is the best way to do it. Thank you.
So I don't know if this has happened to any of you, but happens to me occasionally. I get up in the middle of the night. I know the same pathway to the bathroom. It's dark. I don't want to turn on any lights. And I hit my little toe on the corner of the bed. The first thing I do is cover my mouth to stop from screaming and saying words that we should never use in here. But what happens down in that little toe is what can happen in any joint, which is immediately the body goes through a process of remodeling, which is trying to repair that joint. So blood doesn't flow in that area very well. There is stasis, which means sludge blood, more or less. There's the process of nutrients now can't get in like they used to. So in order to heal that joint, what can we do? Put some ice on it? You know, that doesn't really work. We're still going to be limping around for a few days. But that's the area where blood doesn't flow the best, which is the toes, which is the fingers, which is the nose, things like that, the area where there's the least amount of circulation. But imagine an elbow, a shoulder, a neck, a back, a hip, a knee, all of these joints that, the first response for a patient is to do what? Take pills, okay? And then the pills don't work. What's the next step? Well, we go see our doctor. They give us stronger pills. And then those pills don't work. And then what's the next step? Go see the orthopedic surgeon. What's the orthopedic surgeon do? Well, their last name is surgeon. So if they don't do surgery, bye-bye, until you need it, okay? So come back when you need it. And then one surgery doesn't work, so let's do another surgery, and on and on and on. So this is kind of how the process goes for damaged joints, chronic injuries. There has to be a better way. We all know the science behind this now, increasing blood flow. To sit down and tell somebody that, their head kind of spins. But the bottom line is your own experience. What is your own experience with this machine? What is the person that introduced this machine to you? There are going to be numerous people that you will gather as evidence. That's, to me, what I would do, is say, this person, this is how it helped them. This person over here, I've got this person's phone number. Give them a call. Because to try and explain the science, sometimes it can make people's heads spin, and they get what's called tired head, where they tune out, okay? So it is important to keep it simple, but personal stories are really what is going to help people understand why this machine is so valuable and why everybody needs to have it. Thank you.
I'll tell you, sometimes there's a little bit of a problem in approaching a medical professional. I know Nathan Bryan, who teaches medical doctors. He has a lot of frustration because they don't get microcirculation. That's not just, they don't get it. They're not interested in it. When it comes to chiropractors, I know them well. And I'll tell you, from my own experience, a lot of patients want to show me a lot of things. Number one, I don't have the time. Number two, it takes having some type of credibility to be able to get to me. Scott was able to get to me because I had an interest already in microcirculation, which I'm one of the few. Most people don't have that interest. So you have to have credibility with that doctor, and you have to have, you just got a lot of training today. And part of that training told you how to present it. You have to know how to present it in a manner that's going to make him think about that patient that he really wants to help, because all of us want to help. All of us want to help patients. And if there's a way that we can help them, we're interested in looking at them. And so offering to let them use your Avicen for a period of time and let them see what happens in the office, that could be one way that you can approach a practitioner to actually use it and find out the benefits of it themselves. But you have to prepare them, because a lot of people don't have an immediate response that is dramatic. Just because you put your hand in the Avicen doesn't mean you have an immediate response. You have to prepare them a little bit for that type of response that they're going to get, which may be relaxation first, which may be feeling a little bit better, and not make them think that, oh, man, your pain is going to be gone in 15 minutes, because it's probably not. So you have to be willing to understand what the product does. You have to be able to understand, like you talked about, the stories that your patients, or I'm sorry, you can tell where I'm coming from, that your acquaintances that you've used this on, what they've had, those are very important. Doctors will listen to that, and your sincerity with it. Now, I do also, while I have a couple seconds here, I want to answer a couple of questions. Everybody's been asking me, because one of my hats that I wear, I'm a consultant for Blue Cross and Blue Shield. And so what's that billing code? That billing code is 97010. CPT code 97010 is the billing code that you can use. Not that it's worth a lot of money, but at the same time, you're not doing a lot of work. You put the hand in and push the button and you're gone. So not a bad deal. So I think that answers it. 97010. It's called the CPT code, current procedural terminology, and that's the code that's used for heat.
And please, don't do your own billing. Have the physician do that. Just helpful safety hint there. So, please.
One thing that I just wanted to say from my own experience, when I talk to clients or patients, it doesn't matter. I tell them about how the machine works. I have them see the two-minute video, but I also manage the expectation by saying that when you some people get the effect right away with the first treatment, but some people will need more treatments or more time to be able to see the benefits. So I leave it open. So I think that's you're safe in that way.
Very good. So you brought up a very important point, which is the fact that there's billing, there's the whole economy of our medical system. So if you could, Dr. Bird, talk a little bit about some experiences you've had with patients that come in and how perhaps the Avicen could be a cost-effective alternative, maybe some train wrecks you've seen, or just knowing that this person came to you with a financial woe.
Yeah, I think I've already done that, right? But, my interest really in the future is it's going to be driven more toward our infertile patients. A lot of the people that we work with have been trying to become pregnant for many, many years and are referred in and go through some of our more advanced procedures like in vitro fertilization, which is the last thing on the list that we typically do. And many times we're trying to recreate what nature would do in a normal cycle, grow a uterine lining thick enough so that a little baby embryo can attach. And in our quest to do that, we give estrogen, which is the stimulant that allows the endometrium to grow, through a patch that is exposed to the skin, and it builds the estrogen levels and it allows that to happen. Where we run into problems is that not everybody responds and grows a uterine lining to that. And it's been a real confusing thing for us because we do the blood levels, and these levels are really elevated. So it's not a problem with them absorbing the estrogen into their system through the patch. It's getting that blood level into the uterine lining where the receptors are so that they'll respond and the uterus will grow. And so the next area that I'm interested in is taking those individuals that are having difficulty growing a uterine lining and using the Avicen and see if we can get some good data on that. I know it's kind of a niche area, but it'll really confirm this notion of circulation, microcirculation.
Yeah, I think that's the goal of this board, is to present ideas. So any financial stories on patients that come in and it's like, here's this Avicen and it's $4,000, or presenting that to a patient and finding it cost effective?
I have decided to ignore talking about money with the patients, and I just go right to, you really need this. And this is the first time, I think, in my whole career I've done anything like that, which kind of surprises me. But it's priceless if it's going to help you when nothing else has. So talking about patients that have painful, swollen joints, and we just can't seem to get them to even change their diet sometimes. And this helps. One of my friends has MS, and her husband has really severe swollen joints, and she trusts me, she knows me, she's known me for a long time, and she just bought the machine for him primarily. And she told me that he felt better in three times on the Avicen. So that was thrilling. So it's funny, I just really say it's pricey, but you need it. That's what I say.
I like that idea. And we only have just a couple minutes left, so brevity is key.
What's the next step, should I say? So we're addressing a couple questions. So what's the future of Avicen, or what?
Really, if you've had issues with it being cost-effective
okay,
or not.
so, okay. So for me, my personal experience, this I'm talking about. In the beginning, before the company Nulife Ventures had financing arm or financing button in the back office, it was a challenge for people. But with that being in place now, and it's running very smoothly, it's been easy, I should say that, easier.
Very good.
Yeah.
Like I've said earlier, I think the question is, well, not do you need this, is how can you not have this? And I think that's the better way of looking at it. It's a trust, it's a relationship, like they talked about earlier on stage. If you already have that, then it's just getting past the reservations of, money and things like that. Always seems to get in the way, but not if it's something that can change their life.
The bottom line is, if somebody's in pain or if they need this equipment, they'll find a way to get it. And they'll appreciate you. It's that simple.
And we are the vehicles to do that, ladies and gentlemen. So I would just like to ask, do you approve of this board? It is an honor to present them, and it's an honor to work with all of you, and we are here for you.